Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you a meta-analysis for the April 2020 format. So this is a bit weird, right? Because we don't really have any big events going on. We pretty much have this weird pseudo-online meta that's currently taking place, which is actually kind of cool because now there isn't really like a price barrier to playing Yu-Gi-Oh! You pretty much just have to find your way to get into some online tournaments, but it is a weird experience. And so I wanted to bring you guys this video just so we can take a look at how the online meta is shaping up, so that way if you are participating in any of these events, you're going to be best equipped to take on that online metagame. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So a big bulk of this meta discussion is going to be focused on the Luxury Championship Series event, which took place this past weekend at the time of recording this video. This tournament had in the neighborhood of about 250 players, which is probably the largest online event that takes place in a single day. And the reason why I wanted to use this is because this did have a $20 buy-in, and with that you do have some of the top players in the game that were competing in this tournament. Lots of big names because there was some big prize money on the line, and so you can expect the best of the best when it comes to this tournament. So we're gonna go ahead and look at the overall breakdown when it comes to this tournament first. And as you can see here, I mean, wow, Emancipator just absolutely dominating, taking up a huge portion of this representation. You can also see that towards the bottom of this pie chart, we have two different variants of Eldritch. We have pure Eldritch as well as invoked Eldritch, taking up about like 1/8 of the pie chart each respectively. So combined, that's like another 25% of the pie chart just from those two decks alone. And then you've got other stuff like SALAMANGREAT taking up like 10%, some other invoked variants like maybe invoked Mech Knight taking up another 10% as well. And then the pie chart slowly starts to diminish. But when we get to the top 32, oh my god, because Emancipator has just been dominating not only this tournament, but the online scene in general. You can see how it is just taking up such a large portion of this pie chart, because this is one hell of a deck, and it's probably looking like to be the deck to beat of the current April 2020 format. Eldritch also has some pretty decent representation in this pie chart as well. You see it broken down to all the different types of Eldritch variants that people were playing. Invoked Eldritch looking to be the most popular, and without a surprise, Invoked Eldritch actually was the deck to take this event. Now, a lot of people were probably placing that in Emancipator, which it ended up getting second place, third place, and fourth place. We'll talk about Emancipator in a little bit. I want to start by focusing solely on Eldritch itself. Now, Invoked Eldritch has been the direction that a lot of players have been opting for, because Alistair and the Invoked cards are really powerful in being able to take advantage of the fact that all of the Eldritch cards are in fact light, which means then you get Mechaba in addition to everything else that the deck is capable of doing. We see Cameron Neal's build here specifically was also incorporating cards like Magician Souls, which seems like a natural inclusion in the deck since you're playing so many trap cards. Souls allows you then to cycle some of those cards for more cards, but then also if you discard any of the Eldritch traps, those can cycle themselves in the end phase to get more cards and pretty much plus you even more. And then you also have even a small spellbook engine in this build in particular, being able to just draw you even more cards to get you to the power cards that you want to see for all of your matchups. So congratulations to Cam Neal for taking it. I mean, a very seasoned player, a very big name, so really no surprise that he managed to take it, but still an incredible feat nonetheless. But now let's move on to Emancipator. Now, I talked about Emancipator in depth in my How to Beat Emancipator video. If you want to kind of see the ins and out on why the deck is so powerful and also some tips and tricks on how to beat the deck. But here is second place from Tristan. This is a pretty standard cookie cutter Emancipator build with the Go 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 engine that we've kind of discussed and seen a little bit of already. This is the direction a lot of the players are going, because all of these level 4s essentially allow you to get into your Gallic Granite, which then by extension gets you to your Block Dragon, and that's kind of what gets the deck up and running. Sure, all the Emancipator cards are powerful in their own right, but being able to turbocharge that with Gallic Granite and all the other Go 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 cards just happening to be Earth and Rock is very incredible as well. We also see here he has the Quackimiru Guardian, so that way if we get one of those early, we have early protection from hand traps, which is one of the reasons why the deck is so good, is that it has early protection from Nibiru. When you look at this deck, there's so many individual cards in here that are just going to be summoning one after another that it's very difficult for people to stop this deck if they aren't able to remove the threats off the board, and that's why you see some other cards not really being as effective or played as much for those particular reasons. Then when we get to third place, we have yet another Emancipator piloted by Mateus. This is very similar to the second place build, just some different card choices. And even when we get to fourth place piloted by Robert, again, you're going to see a lot of similarities across these top decks because this is pretty much the standardized version, but you have some individual card choices here and there, like in the instance with Robert, he was opting to play a card like Power Giant, very interesting card to see there. But going forward, you can take a look at these three lists and rest assured that this is going to be what a majority of the Adamancipator lists look like, and so if you can isolate any of those weaknesses, then that's going to be where you're going to start to see a lot of success in this upcoming format. Then moving on to top 8, we have yet another Eldritch variant, but this one is taking advantage of the Light Swarms. Now this is really cool, being able to use Charge of the Light Brigade, mill some of the Eldritch cards off the top of your deck, which then in the end phase will trigger to get you more advantage, but then you can search something like Raiden. Raiden can then be normal summoned because you don't really normal summon in Eldritch, so you have a slot for a card that can take up that role. You normal summon Raiden. Raiden can mill potentially 4 more cards, but also Raiden is a tuner, which means then you can go into stuff like Crystron Needle Fiber and potentially have some plays there. Maybe go into something like, let's say, Formula Synchron, summon that out, and because all of your trap monsters are level 5, 5 and 2 make 7, guess what? You can Black Rose Dragon your opponent during their turn. Your Eldritch cards don't lose any advantage because during the end phase they'll all reset themselves, and it's a really cool way to blow out your opponent. This is a really neat build. I just love that the Light Swarm cards are actually seeing some utility in this format, and who knows, this may be a direction that some people choose to take. And then we get to what I think is the star of the show, and that was Elijah Green on DDD. He made top 16, and I think people are so happy to see DDD making a resurgence post Master Rule 5, because a lot of people had high hopes that this deck would do wonders. Now, it is to a small degree, but still making the top cut is pretty cool. I think what's interesting about DDD is that, yes, it's a combo deck, and if you're looking at combo versus combo, like against Adamancipator, a lot more people are going to be on Adamancipator. However, one of the reasons you might want to think about playing DDD is that even though it might necessarily not be the stronger combo deck, because even though you're still able to put out a board of like Crystal Wing, Siegfried, and like Borreload Savage Dragon, yeah, it may not be the best, but I mean, this deck can still make some incredibly powerful boards. Thing is, though, because you're on DDD, a lot more people might be familiar with how to play against Adamancipator, but they might not be familiar with how to play DDD because it is relatively new, at least in the context of seeing competitive play. So even though it was a one-of instance, it could be a deck that you might want to experiment with and maybe see, oh, this deck is really cool. It actually is pretty decent in this current format, and because people aren't really knowing how to play around the deck necessarily, that could give you an edge and give you the potential to maybe steal some wins here and there. But wrapping up this top 32, I want to discuss some of the one-of decks that made it in this top cut, but were decks that a lot of people were anticipating were going to be at like the top of this format before we saw the massive overwhelming surge of Adamancipator and Eldritch. So first up, Salamangreat, piloted by Clay. All these decks are going to be top 32, by the way. I mean, Salamangreat's looking pretty much like it always has. Maybe your hand trap lineup is a little bit different with stuff like main deck DD Crow. That's something that isn't too common, but we did see every once in a while in the previous format. Salamangreat has like an okay matchup against both of these other decks, being able to have some interesting interactions like with Heat Leo and the Eldritch Trap, so that way they get shuffled back into the deck instead of being sent to the graveyard. That's kind of cool. You can also main deck a ton of hand traps for Adamancipator without it really hurting your engine, so we see some people trying to delegate to Salamangreat if they want to play more of like a balanced deck that's kind of like okay for going first or second, but it has definitely not been seeing the numbers that anyone, myself included, would have expected. We also have Invoke SHADDOLL, piloted by Ian. Now again, this is another deck that people had a lot of high hopes for moving into this format, and when you look at it against a deck like Adamancipator, like, yeah, WINDA seems pretty good, but the problem is going second, I don't think Invoke SHADDOLL can really deal with the boards that Adamancipator is able to produce, but even more so, Eldritch has almost taken this deck completely out of contention, because if there's Eldritch running around everywhere, which there is, then the problem is your opponent's not going to be able to plus off of their SHADDOLL fusion activations, because the only time Eldritch goes into the extra deck is to what, like kill you with the rail cannons, or alternatively, you have cards like Super Polymerization, which are completely ineffective against both Eldritch as well as Adamancipator in a lot of instances, just because their boards don't really lose to it. So all the reasons why Invoke SHADDOLL was good last format really don't apply to this particular format either. There are still arguments to be made for playing the deck because there are some unfair things that it can do. It doesn't take away from the power that the deck has. It just seems to have gotten power creeped almost to a degree, even though there are still some people playing it. So bear in mind, this deck is still running around, but not nearly to the degree that you might expect. Rocket Link was also able to pick up another top 32, piloted by Shu Ping Zhu, of course. Now again, another combo deck, but Adamancipator is definitely the deck to beat right now, but there are arguments that you you could want to play Rocket Link for its own reasons, but again, the deck's running around, but not nearly to the insane degree as Adamantipator, so just bear in mind you still might want to understand those interactions, because people still like playing the deck. The deck is a lot of fun. We also had Guru Control in top 32. Now, when you're looking control deck versus control deck, Eldritch has pretty much pushed all of the control decks out of the format, but this deck in particular is interesting because it's able to play cards like There Can Be Only One and Summon Limit rather well, and against Adamantipator, if you're going in a very Adamantipator dense format, or tournament rather, then you might actually see some success, and then you just have to find a way to navigate those control matchups when you go up against Eldritch. But it's cool to see the deck still do something. And then last but not least, oh boy, we have a deck that a lot of people were excited to see, and that is Zoodiac. This is really cool. I mean, playing the full suite of 3 Pot of Avarice and 3 Pot of Desires, because when you're playing Zoodiac, you easily fill up your graveyard with more than 5 monsters just going through all the Xyz, so you pretty much get to just draw 2 cards almost every single turn as long as you have a Pot of Avarice. Playing a full suite of the Solemns as well. It's very reminiscent of kind of the older days of Zoodiac, just being a very strong deck because Dryden's back, you have Whiptail for removal, the deck is very explosive, and it's very adaptable to formats. I just think it's really cool to see. Again, it is a one-off, so take that for what it's worth, but I think a lot of people are still hyped to see it nonetheless. Now, the one thing I did want to end on before we wrap up this video was actually an interesting post by Ready for a Duel, the Facebook group, where they're showing the online statistics and win percentages of some of the top decks of the format. I'll go ahead and show that to you right now. Do keep in mind that this information is solely coming from Dueling Book. However, when you look at this gives us some very interesting data. I mean, we have Adamantipator at the top of this list with the most matches played at a 61% win rate. We have Eldritch, just the pure form, being at 62%. We have Salamangreat with a lot of matches played, but only with a 55% win rate. However, it still has a lot of matches played, which means people are playing it. Then we have Invoked Eldritch, which is second from the bottom, but it has 68% win rate, which is very, very good. And then lastly, Dinosaur actually managed to make it on here as well. We didn't really talk about Dinosaur too much in this video, but at a 54% win rate, there are some interesting applications when you look at Dino versus the rest of the meta, but I thought this was an interesting piece of data to bring you guys, and thank you to Ready for Duel for putting it in this nice presentation. So guys, that's gonna wrap up this meta analysis. I think it's really interesting to see the online meta and how it's starting to develop as we move further into quarantine, but I'm gonna bring you guys as much information as I can, so that way we can continue to see new trends moving forward, and you guys can keep up to date with all the Yu-Gi-Oh action. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. I was not expecting this meta to look anything like this, but it's really cool to see that a lot of people are still finding ways to play Yu-Gi-Oh, even given the circumstances. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.